morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where things on the movie side of Hollywood seem to be finally picking up a little bit, at least enough for me to have three legitimate movie news stories for us to discuss today. And the first one actually managed to trend for just a little bit yesterday, and that's Ridley Scott's, well, not announcement, but so often now, and it's weird. I wonder how you guys feel about just this, and that's that while talent is promoting a film that's about to come out, in front of and behind the camera, they're often asked questions by the press that have nothing to do with that film, focusing on an upcoming film, often one that's a little bit more genre-y. And I'm curious, what do you think of that trend? Some talent will refuse to answer those questions, but some talent will, I think, play along, not only to be polite to their interviewer, but also because they would like their interview to get hits as well. However, while I can understand this with smaller films that don't really generate a lot of heat, The Martian is a really hot film. It's supposed to do very well at the box office. It's very hotly anticipated, both critically and financially. So I don't really think that Ridley Scott needs to, throw anchors into the future to get press for his upcoming film. But he's playing that game anyway, or willing to play along, because of course he doesn't start this, the interviewers do. But anyway, he was asked about the upcoming Prometheus 2, and so he very graciously revealed in the conversation that the title of the film, the sequel, actually won't include Prometheus and will instead be called Alien Paradise Lost. And that's what trended. Actually, not the alien part, just the Paradise Lost part. And if I were Ridley Scott in the studio, I'd be like, damn it, because the most important part of that title is the alien part of it, right? That they are really finally making it official that this is an alien prequel. I mean, it was pretty obvious when anybody watched Prometheus that that's what it was, but remember how coy they were when Prometheus was coming out? They're like, maybe it has to do with Alien. We're not sure. Ridley Scott, one day it changes day to day, et cetera, et cetera. But anybody watching the movie was like, it's clearly a an Alien prequel. So now they're embracing that, and when I first heard the title yesterday, my immediate thought was, what about Neil Blomkamp's Alien movie, right? The one that he just managed to get in the nick of time before Chappie was DOA at theaters, which is such a tragic shame because it was such a fantastic film. I know some of you didn't like it, but I think for the most part, those of us who went to see the movie were pretty darn impressed. And I would have loved to have seen a sequel to Chappie, but apparently that's not going to happen. Although maybe Neil Blomkamp will find himself a little more time on his hands because what's going to happen with his Alien movie. Now, the most likely thing is that they're trying to build this into like a cinematic universe, one of these multi-movie franchises like that's happening in the comic book realm. And, they're trying to do that with Transformers. I'm sure that the Jurassic Park movies might be headed in that direction maybe a little bit. And now maybe they're trying to do that with the Alien film. So these films could totally coexist. But I'm less interested in, setting up Alien, and that's something else that Ridley Scott revealed. He said, this movie's going to finally reveal, why the Beast, I'm guessing that he's talking about the alien in Alien, the Alien movies, why that was invented. And it flourished quite well. I mean, it was very well invented, but, why that being was made. And now, I find that a little bit weird because, when Alien first started, I know there were all, the first movie came out, I knew there were all these weird clues as to what had happened, but I think everybody had assumed that a spaceship had also, another, intellectual other intellectual beings, intelligent beings, had landed on that planet, and this horrible alien species had attacked them, and they had fallen to them. So, it was kind of just like the horror of space, and everybody always is like, oh, I wish we could meet intelligent life or other life, and you're like, maybe you don't. And I always thought that the Alien films were a great example of that. But now they seem to be trying to have this greater message behind it, right? Like that those beings created the alien creatures to like maybe work as like a population control or something. Who knows? But I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, I'm less interested in the prequel situation for Alien. Also, that really takes out a lot of the what I think made the first Alien so special, and that was, of course, truckers in space. The ordinariness of it. I thought that was really an important factor there, and something that I really loved being brought to the genre, right? It's usually scientists or people who work at a company. This was just like truckers, and I thought that was great because I think that that's most relatable to most of us moviegoers, right? I just thought that was really cool, and I feel like all this other stuff is gonna take away from that potentially. But what I'm most interested in is how this all ties into Blade Runner. There's been a lot of rumors that Ridley Scott is, factoring that in. There are overlaps between Prometheus between both Alien and Blade Runner. Like Prometheus is the missing link, and then of course there's Michael Fassbender's David, who is widely believed to be I think a precursor to the replicants. I'm not quite. I think, or maybe it comes. I think it comes later. The timeline is a little bit wonky, but I think there's definitely an overlap there. And I would not only like to see the Blade Runner franchise or film, universe officially brought in, but how cool would it? Because they're making Blade Runner 2 to see Michael Fassbender's David, a version of him, pop up over in that movie, right? I mean, as they showed in that, like the David commercial. That was like to promote the Prometheus film. It came out, it was like a viral video, Happy Birthday David, and it was basically an ad for that replicant. Was by far much more interesting than the movie itself, Prometheus, when it came out. So I would love to explore like the history of David's, replicant, and does the model evolve even though they keep the same face on it, etc., etc. I mean, I think that would be really interesting. And Michael Fassbender always makes movies better. I just really like his David, and I hope that that character is a big part of Alien Paradise Lost. But I'm curious, what do you think of how they're changing the Alien franchise retroactively? What do you think of Blade Runner being in the mix there? Do you like that idea as much as I do, or do you think that they should keep these movies separate? I said I'd like to see The Martian looped into this whole thing potentially as well. And then also, what do you think again of this practice of asking talent about an upcoming film, that's more genre-y instead of the actual film at hand? And do you think The Martian qualifies as something that needs help? All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, get ready for this. Now, Benedict Cumberbatch already had a lot of luck with the Weinstein Company with The Imitation Game. It got him a nomination. He didn't win, but still, it got him on the board. I think it undid a lot of the damage that Star Trek Into Darkness did. I know some of you will claim that it didn't, but I'm telling you, Benedict Cumberbatch is not, I think, particularly well regarded by mainstream moviegoers. I think genre fans like him, and I think that BBC television fans like him, but I think there's still a number of people in the American movie-going audience who are like, I don't get Benedict Cumberbatch. But I think The Imitation Game helped a lot. Not only did it get him on the board awards-wise, but it did very well at the box office. So he's reteaming with the Weinstein Company for a movie called The Current Wars. But get this, his co-star will be none other than Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, talk about an acting Avengers. That is like a movie which at the very least will have like both their fan bases going crazy. And I think there is an overlap in their fan bases. And perhaps, Benedict Cumberbatch, who's managed to move forward a little bit, can help pull Jake Gyllenhaal with him. Because I think Jake Gyllenhaal is someone who deserves to start to move forward as well. So what's this about? It's called The Current Wars again, and it was a Blacklist script back in 2011. However, I'm starting to doubt how awesome the Blacklist might be, because I've seen a couple of movies now that were like, oh, Blacklist scripts, and then I've watched the films and I'm like, yeah, nobody should have made this movie. The Blacklist, by the way, is supposed to be a list of the top screenplays that are out there that haven't been made into movies, and it's supposed to be shocking. Like, can you believe nobody's wanted to make this into a movie? And I think too often lately I've been like, yeah, I can believe it. So anyway, hopefully this is not one of those cases, but it's called The Current War, and it's about Thomas Edison, who will be played by Benedict Cumberbatch, going up against George Westinghouse, who will be played by Jake Gyllenhaal, to decide what kind of electricity they should use for the masses, right? Like, how should it run through people's houses? So it's kind of like, a science, I wish they could, I don't know if I think Tesla was a contemporary. Everybody always loves Tesla. Tesla's such a cool name. I'd be like, this movie needs some Teslaism. Like, Tesla is like the scientific version of like an explosion in a movie, right? People hear Tesla and they're just like, suddenly this is cool. And I don't know how cool Edison and Westinghouse are. I don't know my science history off the top of my head. I didn't think to Google it before I started recording, but I do think that every movie could use some Tesla. But anyway, although I wonder if people start to associate that now more with the cars, if that's, commandeered that name successfully. But anyway, this sounds pretty good to me. It might be a little bit of a tough sell, but we'll see. Again, The Imitation Game, very successful financially and during award season, so maybe this could follow in its footsteps. But anyway, who's going to direct this? It'll be Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl director, Alfonso Gomez Rejon. And I think it's very interesting. He's continuing to get a lot of work because that movie was so well reviewed. However, Nobody went to see that movie. It was really a huge box office disappointment. So that would make me very nervous if I was going to hire him, but apparently other people don't feel that way. Especially because he has another film that's coming up first with Will Smith in the starring role, and that's called Collateral Beauty, about an ad exec who has something horrible happen to him, and then his coworkers try and snap him out of it with unexpected consequences. But anyway, I also want to comment on the fact that, there's been a lot of talk about diversity behind the camera. And while I think we're seeing it a little bit with black directors like Ava DuVernay, Malcolm D. Lee, I think really Antoine Fuqua is the most successful mainstream black director working today, but we're really seeing an explosion behind the camera of Latino and Asian directors. You're not seeing that in front of the camera with actors so much, but you are seeing it behind the camera. So it's kind of interesting, I think, on a side note, to see what ethnicities, everybody I think is moving forward, but in what category, right? You've got James Wan, Justin Lin as directors. They're both making huge moves forward. I don't remember the guy. John Cho, who directed the G.I. Joe movies, upcoming Gem and the Holograms, etc. John Chu. And so you have those three Asian directors doing incredibly well, and then you have the Latino directors, Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, Alejandro Inarritu, and now Alfonso Gomez Rejon, and other talent as well. So very interesting right there. All right, so that's the second story of the day. How does that movie sound to you? And what do you think of Cumberbatch and Gyllenhaal teaming up? All right, so the third story of the day is that they finally released the Spectre theme song for the new James Bond movie, sung by Sam Smith. And this is like a big deal because he's the first solo male artist to do a James Bond theme song since Tom Jones for Thunderball. And I have to say, I listened to Sam Smith's song, Writing on the Wall, which I think obviously refers to that scene in the trailer where people that we've lost, in their service to this country, and someone scrawled James Bond's name on the list. I'm sure you remember that from the trailer. But anyway, the song's not that great. It's no Tom Jones, and I think it, if you're going to like that song, I think it's going to be a real act of love, either towards Sam Smith, the Bond franchise, or both. But I don't think that it's totally, game over for the song, because I think a lot of the success of a Bond song depends on the opening credit sequence that's paired with it, right? Like Casino Royale's opening theme song wasn't so hot either, but it had a really cool theme with cards, playing cards, and so that looked pretty cool. Also, by the way, Spy did a pretty good job of approximating a James Bond opening credit sequence as well. But that's not the only reason we're talking about Spectre today. I wanted to loop that in because that just debuted this morning. But yesterday I got an email from Regal Cinemas telling me that the Spectre Regal ticket, the special ticket, was almost sold out, and did I want to get one, because there are only 1,000 available. And I was shocked that this was almost sold out. So I wanted to ask if any of you had bought it, and also to give you a heads up, because if you're interested in buying it, apparently they're almost sold out. So what it is that for $100, you can get a very special, obviously limited edition Spectre ticket. There's only 1,000 being made, and what it is it's a metal card, like a credit card, that has the Spectre logo on it and then your name engraved on it. And that's not only so it's cool, but also so they can do an identity check when you show up at the box office, because you have to show a photo ID. And what happens is that throughout the theatrical run of Spectre, you can see it as many times as you want, once per day, but in any format. So you can see it in IMAX, you can see it in RPX, but it has to only be you. You can't lend it to somebody because, again, they want to do that ID check, that personal identification check. So I'm just curious, though. You'd have to see it in IMAX, I think, 3 or 4 times to get your money's worth back. So I'm curious if anyone thinks it's worth it. And also, I'm curious, if you did buy this card, what inspired you to spend the money? I mean, this is obviously something that the movie studios and the theaters are, really trying to do to try and generate more income at the box office. And $100 for a ticket, if they can get people to spend $100, I think that's not bad. I have to say, I don't really see this being viable for the Spectre film, although clearly they're almost sold out. But I think there's legitimate value in this for a Suicide Squad movie, or a Batman v Superman, or Captain America 3 Civil War. I think I can see people wanting to see those movies upwards of 4 times in the theater. And then, they would definitely get their money's worth because, again, it's for the whole theatrical run. I don't know if the Bond movies have the same kind of repeat viewing that comic book movies do. So very curious indeed. So would you buy a $100 ticket for any of those films under the same circumstances? All right, so those are the three news stories of the day, three movie news stories of the day. And then I have that Fun Friday. I have a Fun Friday viewer question. So it's not really movie related, but I thought it would be fun to discuss and also for you to share your own thoughts down below. Well, not your thoughts, but what are you reading? Because Croc 1513, I commented on there not being a lot of comics to buy lately, and I buy my comics in Comixology. And so Croc 1513 said, question, where's the list of comics that you're getting at the moment, Grace? So I decided to share it today, and I'd be curious to know what you're reading. And I think a lot of us would be curious to compare notes because, again, there's not a lot of titles out there. Like both Marvel and DC are going through considerable shakeups in terms of continuity and the books they're putting out there. And so since they're in a transitional period, I think it really limits what we can buy. And also, I think a lot of us are discovering independent titles. So I think that's good to, trade notes on that. So here's a snapshot of what I'm reading recently. Like, for instance, I'm reading Saga, but they're on hiatus right now. But everybody's reading Saga. If you're a comic book reader, you're reading Saga. So anyway, I'm very much enjoying the new Batgirl. I really like that series quite a bit. I like Hawkeye. Even though they changed the creative team, I think that's been somewhat a very fluid transition. I like Harley Quinn, I have to say. I think that Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti do a great job with that character, and her title is a guilty pleasure. It's not always the best book that I read every week, but or every month, but they have like lots of specials for that. It's so popular. I don't read the Power Girl crossover, though. I don't think that one's particularly good. But the main Harley Quinn title is enjoyable. I'm enjoying Prez. I believe that's actually, I think at DC as one of their secondary titles, or Marvel. It's at one of the big two, but it looks like an independent book, and it's about a teenage girl who gets elected president by accident or under ridiculous circumstances. And I kind of like the look at our political future and all those. It's an interesting commentary on today's not only the political world but society, etc. I think it's very good. I also think the art's pretty good, although they just changed the artist. I hope it's not a permanent change, because I don't think the new artist in the last issue was as good as the first couple of issues. I'm also reading, surprise, surprise, at least to me, the Star Wars titles. I didn't like them at first, but I decided to pick up the new Star Wars with Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Han Solo's ex-wife on the cover. So I picked that one up, and I also picked up Star Wars Shattered Empire, which just started. I thought both of them were pretty good. Star Wars Shattered Empire is actually pretty important. I think that they introduced Poe Dameron's parents in the first issue, so I think that you're probably going to want to pick that up if you want to have a little bit of extra context for the new movies. But as for the Star Wars title, that was good too. I really appreciate the artists that are on both titles, and that made it a little bit more enjoyable reading. Then I'm reading Wonder Woman, which I think is really hit or miss, but I'm trying to like it and trying to give it a chance. I loved Daredevil, but I think it just ended, so I was very sad to see that. That's one of the few casualties of Marvel's reshuffling that I really regret. I continue to read East of West, even though I often don't understand it. Hickman, Jonathan Hickman. If you used to watch Think About the Ink, I never get Hickman's writing. He just writes such ridiculous, tangled stuff. But I love the artwork on East of West. I like Nick Dragotta is the artist, I believe, and very, very talented. Then I actually really liked Archie, the new Mark Waid, Fiona Staples Archie. Fiona Staples, of course, is the Saga artist. She's not going to be staying on there for much longer, but it looks like they have a good replacement lined up. I just really like the title. I think the reinvention of Archie to be more modern and accessible is really clever, the way they're doing it. And I think the way they've changed the Archie, Betty, Veronica dynamic is fascinating. I really, really like that title quite a bit. I'm also very curious to see what they do with Jughead. They seem to have changed his origin story a lot as well, and he's getting his own solo series shortly. Then I really liked Giant Days from Boom Studios. I think that's continuing to go on. I correctly identified that the artist on that also has done some of the concept art for the upcoming Gigantic. I was kind of thought that she did, but then one of you confirmed it. Very good book. It's like it's a UK title about these three women in college and their adventures and interacting with the guys that they like. And I also think that's very realistic. It's really good. I like that title quite a bit. It's also very funny. Then I really love Southern Bastards by Jason Aaron. That's a really brutal book. That is not an all-ages book, but I think it's really, really clever, and it was actually recently optioned for a TV show. I don't know what stage it's at in terms of development there, but it's a very good book. Very interesting, a really good snapshot of Southern living. I've never lived in the South, but the letters page, every issue is filled with people saying, "You got it right." And then finally, I am reading Scott Snyder's Batman. I'm not as big a fan of it. I'm curious as to how many people are still reading that title. I was really interested to what they were doing with Jim Gordon as the new Batman, but that seems to have fallen by the wayside. And I don't think it's being explored to the degree that I would have liked it to have been. There's like a looseness to the Batman titles right now, and they don't seem coherent or driven forward in a specific direction. And I miss reading Batman. I'm a big Batman fan. I used to pick up all the Batman titles, but they really, dispersed the Bat family to the wind. You've got Dick Grayson as a secret agent somewhere. You've got Barbara Gordon and their Burnside, their version of Brooklyn, basically operating solo. You have a whole bunch of Robins that are a mess. I dropped We Are Robin. And I just recently read an interview where the writer was like, "Oh, I thought it was interesting to start in the middle of the action where everything's already going on." And I was like, "Nope, didn't work. It's really complicated and it's hard. It's inaccessible." So I do read the Damian Wayne title, of course, Son of Batman. But I have to say that while I think that Patrick Gleason is a fantastic artist, I dearly miss Peter Tomasi writing that character. I think that him not being on that character is a really unfortunate development, and Patrick Gleason is not a very good writer, I'm afraid. And then also Peter Tomasi went over to Superman Wonder Woman, so I'm reading that just because I follow Peter Tomasi wherever he goes. But I think that he's really hindered by some ridiculous and complicated parameters that he has to meet story-wise in the other Superman books with that title. And so he's really stuck servicing those overlapping storylines. That's where it's a problem. You want that good mix of all the books being related, but yet still able to do their own thing. And I'm close to dropping the Superman titles. I went back on them when they started to reinvent the character a little bit, but I don't really think it's going anywhere. Also, Lois Lane, if she's not dating Superman, they have not found something good for her to do to warrant her being there yet. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below think of today's top 3 news stories and what comics you're reading. And if you're reading any of the comics that I am, I'd be curious to compare notes with you on them. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Please let me know what you'd like to see covered on Monday and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.